Well, hiya, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Wanted to come to you this dreary Saturday afternoon and bring a book tag to you. I've kind of put a lot of these book tags off. I've got like 22, 23 pages on my Google Doc worth of book tags that I have not done, where I've either been tagged or I thought, man, I'd really like to do that one. And I just haven't done it. And so I went to looking through the list, and I found one that I got tagged on clear back in June 23rd. Jack at the Rambling Racketer tagged me in the I Want to Believe tag. And so I wanted to do the I Want to Believe tag for you. It was originally done by Ramsey over at Rajathon, and it was kind of a fun tag. And again, got tagged a long time ago, so might as well get it knocked out and out of the way. So here we go. So the first prompt or first question goes like this. Number one, the pilot, a great beginning to a series or trilogy. And the book that I chose for this was a recent trilogy that came out over the American Revolution. It was by Rick Atkinson. It was The British Are Coming. And I thought this was an excellent, excellent start to his American Revolution series. It covers the years 1775 to 1777, from the first shots fired all the way to the Battle of Princeton. And I really liked this book simply because he hits obviously the major battles along the way. Lexington, the Battle of Bunker Hill, Trenton, Princeton, those. But he also hits a lot of the minor stuff that you don't normally hear about. And I really appreciated that. And he's very thorough. Lots of maps in the book to help explain stuff. So I really liked that. So to me, that was the great beginning of that trilogy. And I can't wait till the second one comes out. All right, so prompt number two, Squeeze. Toombs was one of my favorite monster in the series. What is your favorite monster in a book? I don't read a lot of books that have monsters in them, so I took this, a little bit, not like a Dracula or something like that. I took it as in more of maybe a bad person in the book, and I was thinking about the book Misery, and the main character, Paul Sheldon, is a writer, and he gets, he's in, I believe it was Colorado. It's been a while since I read the book, but he was in Colorado and gets stuck out in the snow, and he gets saved by Annie Wilkes, who's a super fan of his, and he's trying to, again, I haven't read this for a while, hopefully I get this right, but he's trying to end this story series or this book series that he's put together, and he's trying to end the series, and she does not want the series to end, and she wants him to rewrite the ending and continue the series, and she goes so far as locking him into her house, into the bedroom, and she takes I have vivid memories of the movie as well, takes a sledgehammer and breaks his legs so he can't go anywhere. And so I really liked that book, and she is definitely a monster in that book. So number three, the ErlenMeyer Flask, the one where they find a baby alien. So what is the best sci-fi you have ever read? Okay, so if you follow the channel, I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but I did choose one of my favorites. I don't know if it's the favorite, but I chose one of my favorites. And it's a Michael Crichton book, Timeline. And absolutely love this book, fast-paced, real fun book, and I also like the movie that went along with it. They made a movie, and basically it's a bunch of archaeologists who have been digging up this castle, this area around this castle, and they find kind of like a time warp, and it takes them clear back to the Middle Ages, and really cool storyline, and they got to try to get from the Middle Ages back to the present times, basically the storyline. But that story was a lot of fun, very fast-paced, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I like all of Michael Crichton's stuff, so it was a classic Crichton. Number four, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. This is the only episode that won an Emmy. So what is your favorite book? You know, I'm a nonfiction guy, so I didn't go with a fiction title. I went with nonfiction. And my favorite subject to read about is Abraham Lincoln. And my favorite Lincoln biography is Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. I absolutely love that book. She does a very, very thorough job. And they took a lot of her writings to make the movie Lincoln. And she just did an awesome job with it. My favorite part of the book is probably when she takes all of his cabinet members and gives the backstory of like a little mini bio in each of the chapters for each of his cabinet members. And I really liked that. It really helped me as a teacher to understand everything that was going on right there when he was forming his cabinet. And the other book that I chose for this was Battle Cry of Freedom by James McPherson. And you've heard me talk over and over again about this book. It is, to me, probably the best single volume history of the Civil War that I've ever read. And I think it's got to rank up there as one of the best ever written about the Civil War. It's very thorough. I recommend it to anybody who's wanting a very thorough reading of the Civil War. I think he just does a masterful job on that. So the fifth question on this tag is Jose Chungs from Outer Space, a funny abduction episode. So what is the funniest book you have ever read? I've had books that have made me chuckle, but I don't know if there's been very many that I've read that have been like funny throughout the entire story. The one that really always pops in my head that made me laugh through the whole story is not even an adult book. It's Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I absolutely loved it. It is a half of the book, or way more than half. A lot of it's done in cartoon, and it's basically the story of a middle schooler. It goes through what life is like in middle school and some of the dumb stuff that happens to middle school age kids. And of course, I'm a middle school teacher, so I really related to that. And I remember the very first time I read that book. My kids were taking a test, and I'd actually had another teacher recommend me to read it. And so, anytime they're taking a test, there's always a little bit of downtime. And so I was at the back of the room kind of monitoring the kids. And then I was reading, back and forth, monitoring, reading. And I was reading that book, and I literally laughed out loud, snickering and laughing. And I had to catch myself and apologize to the kids, because that's how funny I thought that book was. It really hit home with, if you're a middle school teacher out there, please read this book. It is funny. You will totally understand it. So anyway, that's probably the funniest book I've ever read, at least the one that popped in my head. Number 6, Home. This episode was very disturbing and was never re-aired on TV. What is the most disturbing thing you have ever read? For me, I think the most disturbing book that I ever read, and it was actually a trilogy. It started with A Child Called It, and it was about it's basically an autobiography. The author, Dave Pelzer, tells about his childhood in California growing up, and it was I believe the third worst abuse case in California history, and it just tells about his childhood and tells about all the things that happened to him as a kid, what his mother did to him, and just the abuse. One thing that really sticks out to me is she was kind of a clean freak, and she'd force him to do all the cleaning, and she would put basically boiling hot water in the sink, and she would force him to keep his hands in the water. And there was a point where she held his arm or hand over was it over a match or over the burner or something, and burn him. And I mean, there's just several small episodes like that throughout the book. And being a child that went through foster care myself, and different issues that I went through as a kid, that book was probably the most disturbing I've ever read. It really it upset me. And so Dave Pelzer's A Child Called It. Number 7, Postmodern Prometheus. This is a black and white Frankenstein style episode. What is your favorite classic book? For me, it's Robinson Crusoe. I have so many fond memories of that book. Of course, I read it was like a Scholastic classic or Signet classic or something. I can't remember. It was one of the kids' classic books. Is the first time I read it, and I fell in love with it. I was in, what was I, 5th grade, maybe 6th grade, and I read that book, and it was awesome. It was the adventure that my young, wild nature needed. Being stranded on an island and fighting loneliness, trying to survive, finding a cave, making it a home for yourself, and then just when you think that you're alone, you see footprints in the sand, and it's just the mystery of who left the footprints. And when you find those, the owner of the footprints trying to make a friend and and cure the loneliness. It was just an awesome book. I absolutely love it. It's been one of my favorites for as long as I can remember. I actually have upstairs several different editions of the book. I collect it. Anytime I see it, I buy it. So that's probably my favorite classic. Number 8, Bad Blood. In this episode, Mulder kills a vampire, or he thinks he does, and he tells the story all in flashbacks. What is your favorite way they used flashbacks to tell a story? So the one that I was thinking of was James Michener's book Legacy, and it's about a military guy who's being questioned, and it's during the Iran-Contra affair, I think, and he's being questioned in front of Congress and stuff. I think it's Congress. It's been a long time since I read that, but as he's answering questions, he's having these flashbacks to the history of his family, and he's had family members in the military throughout American history, and he's had one person for every major military engagement, and I just thought that was a cool way to tell the story, and it told the story of his family. So, okay, so question number 9, Drive. A man jumps into Mulder's car and they speed through the entire episode. So what book have you read that is a non-stop ride? Okay, so I picked a book by Edward Rutherford called New York, the novel. And it is historical fiction, and it is basically it takes a family through the history of New York. And this family, it's a historical fiction, family lives through the history of New York all the way up to modern times, up into the 1990s. And I thought it was an excellent book, and it's kind of thick. It's 862 pages, but when I was reading it, it did not feel like 862. The book was to me, it was very fast-paced. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and probably need to do a reread on it sometime. It's really good. So for me, that was a non-stop ride. I thoroughly enjoyed the historical aspect of it. Number 10, Milagro. In this episode, a book becomes reality when the author writes it. What is a book setting you would never want to go to? Okay, so here's my book setting that I would not want to go to. Michael Crichton's Sphere. The setting of the book, it takes place in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. I don't swim well. I swim a little bit like a rock. And just the thought of being that deep in the water with the drowning aspect and everything, and there's a whole psychological, it goes from a science fiction to a psychological thriller, and it's really, really good, but I definitely would not want to be down in the water that deep in that setting. So, bonus question. I hope the smoking man is in this one. So, what is your favorite side character in a book? I pounded my head on this one trying to think of what I wanted to say for this one, and I think what I come up with is Nathaniel Green. I love to read about George Washington, and in all of his biographies, Nathaniel Green always comes across as one of my favorite characters. He's loyal. He's not afraid to fight for what he believes in. He's like the little guy fighting the big man, and just what he does from his simple beginnings always impresses me, and he's the side character in the George Washington biographies. Always impresses me. And you could also throw in there, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, if you're talking Washington biographies, Alexander Hamilton. His character always amazes me. He was a genius, and Washington heavily relied on him to do stuff for him and to write for him and do that kind of stuff. And so those two guys are probably two of my favorite side characters. I know it's nonfiction, but they're still side characters in the whole story. So anyway, BookTube, this has been my I Want to Believe tag. Again, I was tagged by Jack at the Rambling Raconteur, and it was originally done by Ramsey at Rajathon. And I'll put the link to both of those videos down below in the descriptions. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for watching.